There are people for whom the smallest details are never small. A seam, a pattern, a misplaced mark. These become signals, studied and memorized until they seem to divide the world into those who know and those who do not. For such individuals, certainty is not a passing comfort, but a requirement, and anything that falls outside its borders is treated as an intrusion. Most lives move along without this level of scrutiny. Imperfections pass unnoticed, substitutions are quietly tolerated, and the day goes on. Yet, in rare cases, a single person chooses to stand at the edge of that tolerance, insisting that every flaw be named, every deviation corrected, no matter the setting. Tonight's entry lingers near that threshold, where devotion to the real thing begins to press against the realities of other people's lives. One may wonder how often our attempts to protect meaning end up revealing something we did not intend to show.
Tyler Linwood grew up in a neighborhood where sneakers were more than footwear. They were commodities stamped with social currency. As a youth, Tyler watched classmates be admired or ignored depending on what they wore. He understood early that laces and logos could open doors that words couldn't. His earliest mentor in this world was a sneaker OG named Dave, an elder who treated authenticity like forensic evidence. Together they dissected boxes, verified seams, and cataloged insole prints as if chronicling crime scenes. Their methodical approach framed shoes as artifacts of identity rather than fashion. One day, Tyler wore his Jordan 1s out to town for the first time, a pair he had earned through an entire year of savings. He turned the corner at 8th and Spencer when a man approached, claiming to be a reseller of high-value sneakers. He offered Tyler $800 on the spot for the shoes, but only after a thorough inspection, and spent the next 3 minutes scrutinizing stitching and authenticity markers with unnerving precision. The encounter ended abruptly when the man grew visibly paranoid, glancing around and muttering about the police closing in on him. He retreated into his battered van and sped away, Jordans in hand. Tyler was left barefoot and unsettled, realizing that trust had been compromised in a transaction where verification should have prevailed. In the years that followed the theft, Tyler transformed his unease into obsession. What began as a loss evolved into an all-consuming routine, one built on vigilance, documentation, and control. He now spends every free minute hunched over his phone, methodically researching sneaker history, culture, and the ever-changing drop schedules. Each new release is tracked and analyzed, every colorway logged in the sprawling catalog he maintains on spreadsheets and backup drives. His collection forms an unending cycle. Pairs acquired, resold, and replaced, with the proceeds funneled into new acquisitions or speculative investments in rare finds he can't quite afford. To Tyler, this ritual is a form of stewardship. He regards himself as a guardian of authenticity, yet the intensity of his conviction often renders him an infuriating nuisance, especially to those who don't share his reverence for details others consider trivial. One afternoon, as Tyler moved through the campus library's narrow aisles, his attention locked onto a pair of Yeezy Boost 350s positioned beneath a study table. The shoes, worn by a freshman named Alex, appeared to Tyler as an affront, an imitation parading itself as legitimate. The familiar tension gathered in his chest. Approaching with quiet certainty, Tyler addressed Alex in a measured tone, requesting to verify the authenticity of the sneakers. Alex hesitated, glancing up from his notes, unwilling to acknowledge the charge. Tyler's inquiry grew sharper, drawing the attention of nearby students. Accusations surfaced. Phrases about stealing from real collectors and watering down the culture punctuated the quiet of the library. Alex, now visibly uneasy, attempted to deflect, but Tyler pressed forward, intent on making an example. A brief scuffle followed, nothing dramatic, more a tangle of arms and retreating steps before a staff member intervened, dispersing the crowd with a few practiced words. The episode left Alex embarrassed, Tyler unsatisfied, and the onlookers unsure whether to laugh or look away. For Tyler, the encounter reinforced a belief that vigilance required confrontation, regardless of consequence. Tyler's vigilance soon demanded a broader stage. At the mall, he stood near escalators and food courts, scrutinizing the footwear of passing shoppers. When a pair looked suspicious, misaligned stitching, questionable liner padding, or off-angled toe box profiles, he confronted the offender directly, demanding to know where and how they acquired their sneakers. Scenes played out as startled patrons were stopped mid-conversation. Mallgoers of subjective standards put on the spot, and security called to handle what staff began referring to as consumer authenticity disputes. Tyler's confrontations left victims shaken or furious, and bystanders often recorded the spectacle for social media. At grocery stores, Tyler roamed the aisles for hours with an empty shopping cart, shadowing customers whose sneakers struck him as irregular. He lingered near end caps, peered around pallet displays, and pretended to compare cereal brands while keeping targets in view. On one occasion, he followed a man wearing Nike Dunk Low SB Tiffany's all the way to the checkout line, confronting him mid-transaction as the card reader chimed. The man responded with confusion, then anger. The scene drew attention from cashiers and nearby shoppers, ending with Tyler being escorted out and asked not to return for a year. On subway cars, he scanned for imitation pairs, growing agitated when crowds or closing doors denied him the chance to intervene. His frustration gathered in clenched fists, darting glances, and the helpless twitch of someone forced to witness infractions without recourse. Over time, he became a person of interest to Metro Police and Transit Security, having been reported multiple times for shadowing passengers and filming their footwear without consent. His conduct, once limited to anonymous spaces, began bleeding into public arenas where his disruptions were harder to ignore. At the local sneaker convention, Tyler's vigilance reached a public crescendo. Spotting what he deemed a counterfeit pair of Yeezy foam runners at a vendor's display table, Tyler stepped onto the stage without invitation and seized the microphone. He singled out the vendor by name, announcing that fakes were an insult to the event and demanding immediate accountability. Vendors bristled, some arguing, while attendees murmured and shifted in their seats. Security arrived to remove him. Tyler, undeterred, called out that standards must be enforced, repeating the phrase as he was dragged backwards through the convention hall until the doors closed behind him. The confrontation that would shift Tyler's trajectory began outside a discount electronics store. An elderly woman, later identified as Mia, stood admiring her recent purchase. A pair of Nike Dunk Low sneakers, tri-colored in pastel shades, fresh from a nearby street vendor. The heel tab was off-center, and the materials unfamiliar, details Tyler registered in an instant. Without hesitation, he confronted her, voice sharp and unwavering, accusing Mia of promoting counterfeits and undermining the value of genuine culture. A small crowd gathered as Mia listened with visible impatience, clutching her bargain shoes. Rather than backing down, Mia matched Tyler's indignation with her own. She informed him in no uncertain terms that authenticity meant little when a person lived on a fixed income, and that $20 for a comfortable pair of shoes was a victory, not a crime. Tyler fired back about standards, legacy, and the erosion of sneaker culture. But Mia was unmoved, telling him to mind his own business and save his lectures for someone with fewer years and less sense. Suddenly, a large man emerged from a neighboring business. Recognizing Mia as his grandmother, he strode over and seized Tyler by the shirt collar. A limited edition Adidas and Puma custom heritage polo, one of only 75 from a pop-up collaboration in Osaka, Japan years earlier, and one of Tyler's most cherished possessions. The fabric strained and warped as the man lifted Tyler clean off the ground, holding him in place while the crowd drew back in silence. When the man released him, the collar hung deformed, its rarity diminished. Tyler, shaken, surveyed the scene. Mia already moving on, chatting with her grandson, the sneakers now an afterthought. The onlookers' faces remained unreadable. In that moment, Tyler confronted not only the consequences of obsession, but the cost exacted on those caught in its path. The incident outside the electronics store left a mark deeper than any scuff or tear. Tyler's passion for sneakers did not diminish, but the memory of being lifted from the pavement lingered. His collar stretched, and the realistic possibility of physical discomfort reshaped his approach. From that day forward, his judgments remained, but his crusades grew silent. The impulse to intervene persisted, now tempered by a practical wariness. He still noticed inconsistent box labels, questionable outsole translucency, or the absence of factory scent, but kept his assessments begrudgingly private, his vigilance contained. He started volunteering at a local youth center, teaching sneaker repair instead of judgment. Most afternoons were spent showing young sneakerheads how to patch canvas, glue midsoles, and stitch torn linings with materials salvaged from other pairs. Occasionally, he brought in rare models as examples, setting them on the table for inspection. He also called schools and retirement homes to offer free lectures on sneaker history and cleaning methods. None accepted. Tyler continued collecting, logging each acquisition and repair in his catalog. In this new arrangement, authenticity remained personal, a standard maintained without public enforcement, and for the first time, without a crowd. There comes a time when every collector, no matter how methodical, must reckon with the limits of preservation. Tyler Linwood, once a sentinel at the gates of authenticity, discovered that even the most rigid standards dissolve at the edges of lived experience. In quieter hours, he puzzled over value, how a thing could be both irreplaceable and overlooked, how scrutiny could protect and also diminish. For a while, Tyler believed that by naming every flaw and tracking each detail, he could ward off disappointment and preserve meaning. Yet meaning proved less stable than stitching, less reliable than a factory code. No matter how vigilant, he could not account for every variable. Shifting trends, imperfect memories, accidents of manufacture. The urge to fix and instruct softened at the margins. Not every counterfeit needed correction. It became clear that authenticity was not just a trait to be policed, but a rhythm to be maintained. A way of attending to things that was both careful and forgiving. Sometimes, the truest acts of stewardship went unnoticed. A sole mended, a lesson offered, an inventory kept without expectation. If there was a lesson, it was that true value often hid itself behind ordinary afternoons and unfinished conversations, returning only when one stopped searching for it. In the end, Tyler Linwood understood his vigilance could neither purify the world nor himself. There would always be new fakes and new disputes. But something remained, persistent as a scuff mark, as unyielding as a memory. If authenticity was never finally secured, neither was it entirely lost. It hovered just out of reach, present in the act of caring as much as in the object itself. Not what he defended, not what he repaired, only what he kept returning to, again and again, for reasons even he could not fully name.